for pharma, the AI adoption has been much slower as compared to sort of other industries. Do you also share the same belief?
It is shifting, but in pharma, AI is still considered pilot.
How do you see, AI playing a role in making access a moat?
AI is putting in the work that is going to allow humans to operate at their highest level. AI for us is running through the records and it's figuring out how do we get to the right patient, who is the right patient, what does this look like, and it's giving our people all the information they need to close the deal.
What is that one advice that you would give to a young startup founder who's trying to build something in your space using the new workforce of agentic AI? What would you advise them? Where do you see a space for them in the future? Pharma is drowning in AI pitches. Most of them sound the same. AI that goes faster, cheaper, smarter. My guest today almost doesn't agree with any of that. But she thinks we've been underselling the real price. Her bet is that AI's biggest job in pharma isn't speed, it's access. Putting a clinical trial inside the doctor's office of a patient who would otherwise never ever see one. She also runs 100-mile ultra marathons. I have no idea how that's a human capability. She recently stepped into boxing. I'm so sorry, I I was asked not to reveal, but still, I'm very proud of it. She recently stepped into a boxing ring to raise money to fight Alzheimer's, if I'm not wrong. And in the interest of full transparency, I think she might have lost, which somehow only makes me like her more. She sits on the board of advisors at Anervea, which is one of our group companies, which means I get to call her at 11 o'clock at night with my stupid questions. And somewhere in between, she runs not one, but two amazing healthcare companies. This is Dr. Mimi Fenton from CEDAR Health Research and Aspen Insights. 0 and 1 in the boxing ring, and zero regrets about either part of that. Welcome to the best AI show on Pharma, Mimi.
What an introduction, Ayush. It's a pleasure to be here.
Amazing. So I have to ask you this, right? First of all, thank you for doing this, Mimi. I have to ask you, or start from the most obvious thing. Most of the guests that show up on talk about AI in pharma on my podcast, generally are the guys who come from AI, from tech, right? You, on the other side, is running and building an amazing AI company, but you are an epidemiologist yourself. What is an epidemiologist doing here?
I ask myself that all the time. It was even worse when I was at Walmart, when I was working at Walmart in my last job and we were building healthcare. People used to say, what is an epidemiologist doing at Walmart? Epidemiology, it's an interesting discipline. And since COVID, a lot more people know about epidemiology. Before, people used to say, oh, is that something related to the skin? But essentially, epidemiology gives you a framework for conducting research. It teaches you research methodology. It teaches you critical thinking. It helps you understand the world in terms of factual and counterfactual, essentially what would have happened if this had not been the case. And so that sets you up in a really nice situation to be able to dive into the world of research. It also gave me a lot of experience with big data. I did my dissertation using healthcare claims data before it was cool to use healthcare claims data, and it was impossible to find that data. And in fact, I'm very grateful. MarketScan, which at that point was owned by IBM. I don't know if it's still owned by IBM. They actually donated some data to me, and then some wonderful folks in pharma taught me how to use it because no one at Columbia knew how to use claims data that I was working with. And so it was it was before real world data existed, right? It was when we were thinking more about safety epidemiology. But essentially what it did was give me a framework for research, and it gave me an understanding of how to apply big data. And so when I think about about my endeavors, I don't necessarily think about an AI company. I think about AI enabled and how can
Right.
we leverage data and technology, including AI, to optimize what already exists. And that's really the intersection where I like to play, where the commercial, the operational, and the technical all come together.
So how does an epidemiologist look at this space differently from someone who comes from commercial plus AI, something like that? So I mean, how what are the things that you might understand or perceive different as compared to a different co-founder? Let's say like myself, right? I come from commercial life sciences plus AI data science background. So how what are the things that you see which I may not see in that way?
Yeah, and it's funny you call me an epidemiologist, and I I do have my PhD in epidemiology, but the epidemiologists would run rings around me right now. I'd be hard pressed to be able to write a protocol, but it does stay with you. Why don't I give you a little bit about my background so you can see how these
Sure,
pieces have come
obviously, please.
together? So in my first chapter, I pursued an academic career. I found epidemiology, and I wrote a lot of papers and I wrote grants and I did a little postdoc and I learned how to use data to answer really interesting research questions that may have otherwise required very intense prospective methodology. And we figured out, you can leverage data in that way, which became very interesting. When I was in my postdoc, it was clear to me that an academic path was not the road that I was planning to go down. And so I was able to move into industry at a time that real world evidence was taking off. This was in um, the early 2000 and teens, early mid 2000 and teens, where people were starting to realize this value of real world evidence, and there were different groups forming. AstraZeneca had a wonderful group that was forming, and I moved over into industry. I was working with a consulting company, and for most of my time in that consulting company, I slotted into the role with AstraZeneca, thinking through how can epidemiology apply to pharmaceutical drug development. What are the tools that we've been given through EPI that can help us to better understand the way in which a drug um, comes to market and then interacts with the real world populations. That's the key, right? In the clinical trial populations, you're talking about very homogeneous, non-realistic populations that you have to look at in order to be able to get the results that you need to get. And then the drugs go into the real world population. And that's where these big data sets come in and really help us understand differential impact within different communities. And went actually with the leader at AstraZeneca, ended up becoming the leader at Sanofi of real world evidence, moved into Sanofi and helped to build out a real world evidence function there, where we were thinking through leveraging data to replace clinical trials at that point, or replace prospective studies, replace retrospective studies, anything that involves some kind of
What
data.
year was this? What year was this in Sanofi?
Uh, 2018, I believe, 2017, 18, 19,
All right.
around that time. After I was at Sanofi, I had an opportunity to move into the CRO world, and I went to Syneos Health. And at Syneos Health, which is a CRO is the organization that typically runs a clinical trial. I had exposure to clinical operations. And I started to shift my thinking, which was that in order to have a huge transformation, it's not about replacement, it's about integration. And so I started to think about what are the ways that data can be woven into the fabric of drug development to accelerate, to enable access, and to transform the way in which drugs come to market. And that's really that pathway that I went along. So AI becomes part of that. Community engagement becomes part of that. Deep understanding of the methodology becomes a piece of that. And so, to answer your question in a very roundabout way, Ayush, I think that the way that I think about it, and maybe it's being an epidemiologist, or maybe it's just that I'm more of a lateral thinker, is that I consider AI to be a key component, but not the only component. And I think about it as AI enabled to transform.
I think you bring a very interesting point that AI is not the tool. It's one of the tools that enables you.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I've always, you know, something that excites me truly is look at how AI sort of dissected different industries and disrupted industries much faster than they could have. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
for example, fintech, e-commerce, and so on and so forth. However, for pharma, the AI adoption has been much slower as compared to sort of other industries, right? And then about 2 or 3 years back, I would meet clients, and I'm sure you must meet people in your ecosystem who were truly excited about AI, who truly sort of wanted to do a lot of things. But now, 3 years down the line, I can see the adoption in AI isn't as fast as, let's say, Sam Altman would have thought. uh, why do you think that's the case? Or let me ask you, do you also share the same belief?
Absolutely. I feel as though I have gone to conferences for the last decade and heard the same conversation, and not necessarily seen a huge amount of action. It is shifting, but in pharma,
Yeah.
AI is still considered pilot. It's still considered niche on the outskirts, something that we need to evaluate and explore. And I understand why, because we're talking about drug development, we're talking about investigational product, we're talking about healthcare needs of individuals. Um, However, there's a lot of opportunity for us to, the things we've talked about, enable access, accelerate drug development, get the right products to the right patients at the right time, leveraging the technology and the tools that are at our fingertips that other industries have more readily adopted. Um, it's a difficult discipline to modernize. It's steeped in rules and regulations. I
Yeah.
do think that COVID gave us an appetite. I think in COVID, we saw that things can be done differently, that we could bring a product to market in less than a year, that it was possible to shift the paradigm. But the way the paradigm was shifted was through urgency and manpower.
Yeah.
And now we need to think about whether the paradigm can be shifted in other ways, essentially using the technology and the AI tools that a company like Anervea is providing, and similarly CEDAR.
Let's dig a little deeper on this, because something very interesting that you talked about your experience at Sanofi, where you led an initiative to try and explore, can real world evidence or data in general replace a lot of things that have been done via traditional clinical trials workflow. And what I know for a fact is that you also ended up saving a lot of money for Sanofi. So, talk a little bit about that. How did that happen? I'm sure, it must have taken some effort, a lot of effort on your end to also convince internal stakeholders that this actually is an equally potent way. So just walk me through, how did you sort of make that happen? And then what happened when you actually did delivered results?
So first of all, I can't take any credit before I recognize the impact of the leader of the team there, Javier Jimenez, who is one of the most, if not the most brilliant people that I have ever had the opportunity to meet. He's somebody that I consider a friend, a mentor, an advisor, and a true visionary. And Javier has always been so far ahead of his time. And the reason I went to Sanofi was that he had this vision. He had this vision that we could completely transform the way in which clinical trials were done using data. And so when I joined, there were just a handful of people in the group. And our role was really to convince the internal stakeholders that this could be valuable. Javier had done a lot of work getting the buy in from the leadership. He'd been able to secure funding. We actually were working with Palantir. Palantir built us a program called Darwin using their Foundry system where we could put all of our data. We had all the Optum data. We had lots of different data set. So we had everything at our fingertips and we had the tools at our fingertips. And so he hired some epidemiologists to say, go and convince stakeholders that this is a good thing to do. And by the way, this was my first time realizing that I could sell. A great opportunity. And so I was given the franchise I was given at Sanofi to work with multiple sclerosis. At that point
Hmm.
in time, Sanofi had a couple of drugs in the multiple sclerosis franchise, one of which was Aubagio, which was nearing loss of exclusivity. And when a drug nears loss of exclusivity, you have reduced funding for the research that you're able to do. And so I already had a team there who had an appetite to do more with less. And so that was a great opportunity for us to be able to think through what that looked like. And so I worked primarily at that point with the medical affairs team at Sanofi, the Aubagio medical affairs team at Sanofi, to understand what are their data gaps. So you do a data gap exercise in pharma every year. You say these are the data gaps and then these are the research programs, and you identify which are the key questions that you want to do, and you put a budget amount, and the budget either gets approved or it doesn't get approved. And at that point, there was a study that was a retrospective study looking as well. So it was meant to be a prospective study looking at a specific outcome for this medication in a certain group of patients, potentially for label expansion opportunities. And the budget associated with it was around 9 to 10 million. And this was several years ago. So
Yeah.
my details
I,
may be a little bit fussy, but this is
sure.
the general gist of it. And so I poured my heart into this data gap analysis to look through what are the opportunities for transformation, because Javier wanted transformation. We really wanted to show how could you take something and transform it. And there was one study that they wanted to do this with, the study, the $10 million study, that I had heard about a data set being available that I thought had the right variables to be able to leverage the data instead of doing prospective data collection. And we were able to secure that data set, and we were able to find the right variables, and we had enough patients to have the right power. And so instead of us having to do a prospective study to answer this research question, we were able to do a retrospective data analysis using that data, which was really exciting because it demonstrated that you could have millions and millions of dollars in savings
Yeah.
for real world evidence. And after that, I was put on the dupilumab dermatology franchise, and dupilumab had just been launched, and so there was a lot of research, a lot of activity. Um, Elena Rizova, who was wonderful, she was the head of medical affairs for dermatology at Sanofi, and she was also a visionary, and she really believed in leveraging data. And she still emails me and says, "Hey, Mimi, can we do some? What do you think about this? Can we use data?" And we just had a great time transforming their portfolio of research. They had lots of registries and other work they were doing, and we transformed that using data. And then other groups caught on, commercial heard about it, and R&D heard about it. And so we started working with the different stakeholders as well. Other franchises were slower to adopt. There was slow
Mhm.
adoption in oncology, for example, and some others, but we had some really good success in dermatology and multiple sclerosis.
What would you have done differently if you had the AI tools and the models that you have access to today?
We did.
You did have access to.
Yeah,
Oh
we
yeah, you
did.
volunteered back then, right?
We had Palantir, and we also worked with Quantum Black from McKinsey. I'm telling you, Javier was so far ahead of his time in things we were doing.
Wow.
So he hired Quantum Black and McKinsey, and we did sprints of maybe 5 or 6 different projects to think about how do you leverage ML, AI, NLP, all of the other tools that are available. I mean, we didn't have agentic AI at that point, and we didn't have some of the more advanced tools, but we were able to answer research questions using these technologies and these approaches. One example is that we did a large project looking at leveraging. We used multiple data sources. We used claims, we used EMR, we used omics, we used trial data pulled it all together and created a cross-functional group across R&D, medical affairs, commercial, RWE, to consider the biological probability of success for different indications for dupilumab. At that point, we were looking at lots of different indications for where to go next with dupilumab. And through a series of sprints, the ML models told us, and this was in collaboration with Quantum Black, the AI models told us which therapeutic areas would have the highest biological probability of success and which therapeutic areas wouldn't. And what's interesting is that when the clinical trials were then done, the results were very similar to what we saw with the ML models. There was one therapeutic area that we predicted would not be successful, and there were multiple that we predicted would be successful, and the clinical trial results aligned with what was predicted.
Wow. So, all right. So you were able to create a model that could predict the chances of success of a clinical trial. And you are telling me that the result it produced was almost aligned with what happened in real time.
Correct. Yep, this was in 2018, I believe.
Wow. I hope hedge funds are listening to this.
And
I
a
suppose,
real shout out, it was David Champagne at Quantum Black who was leading that team, and this was Javier's brainchild. This was where I was just getting my reps in and learning and following
yeah.
Javier's vision. But it was incredible what was able to be accomplished.
Wow, no, I mean this is extraordinary. You don't get to hear such case studies a lot. Thanks for sharing that. How are you using that knowledge with what you are doing today? Because I mean, obviously, I know about CEDAR and Aspen and what you do, and CEDAR and Aspen themselves are highly analytical in their approach. Um, you are using AI today to deliver access rather than delivering accuracy or speed, from your previous assignments. How is this different from what you have done previously?
Yeah, when I think about AI, I think about two opportunities. I think about precision and I think about efficiency. And that's really
Mm.
where the opportunity is. And so, why don't I give you a little background on Zeta? I know you know,
Yeah.
but for your audience, so that we can kind of all be on the same footing here. Um, CEDAR is a clinical trials site network. We're based in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We are fully AI enabled. And the way that we work is we serve as the research arm for hundreds of physicians in the DFW area. Physicians who are too busy to do research themselves consider us their research arm. And part of that is that we have access to their medical records. And so CEDAR was actually developed as a technology company. Some very intelligent guys from Lockheed Martin put together, and again, before their time, this was in I believe 2019, 2020, put together LLMs to be able to very quickly read through the medical records. And then they needed a use case for the LLMs. We call it Aspen Forge. And so CEDAR, the clinical trial site, was born out of the need to be able to proof out Aspen. And so what we've done is we've integrated it together so that Aspen is integrated into the different medical offices, into the medical records, and that's really our driving force for recruitment. So we're able to reach 2 million patients in the Dallas-Fort Worth area using AI. And so with that approach, it's efficiency, but it's also precision because it's
Yeah.
being able to get to the right patient. But I'll give you an example of what I'd like to do with this next, because right now we are using it in far too prescriptive of a way. We're thinking about how do we take the data that is in the charts and use it to identify patients. But I think the opportunity is in taking the data in the charts and using it to predict the opportunity for patients. Um, and this is a good example of something Ayush, you and I have talked about, which is LPA. So lipoprotein A is a biomarker that is associated with significant morbidity and mortality. Right now, there's no known treatment for it, and there are multiple clinical trials looking to identify medications that can lower LPA. There's no gold standard for measuring LPA. LPA is not included in traditional lab work. And so even if you can access the records, it doesn't mean that you're actually going to be able to find the patients, because if the data is not in the record, then it doesn't matter. But there are things that predict elevated LPA, and that's where we need to go. And so one of the initiatives that I actually did in my role before CEDAR, when I was at Walmart, we were building out healthcare research, and we had LPA studies as well. And we were facing the same issue. At Walmart, we were using the pharmacy data, and the pharmacy data didn't have LPA data, but it did give us data on comorbidities and family history and medications and other pieces. And so we did a project where we identified patients who are at very high risk of LPA, and we actually used a combination of traditional and non-traditional methods. So we used actually both regression and machine learning to come up with an algorithm to tell us whether or not somebody was at very high risk of LPA. And then when we tested it, we saw that patients at very high risk of LPA had the same conversion into the studies as patients with known elevated LPA levels. And so the model predicted um, uh, randomization into the trial with the same accuracy as knowing the information. And so I think that this is going to be really important for us in the future. For example, using all of this information that we have on our patients. We have 2 million patients. We have their medical records from the physicians that we connect with. Right now, we're not thinking about how to use that in intelligent ways to be able to increase our patient pool. When my team says to me, Mimi, I need more patients, I say, no, you need to know more about the patients that you already have.
You spoke about Aspen Forge as one of your flagship platform. Can you talk a little bit more about it? I mean, we are you spoke about the genesis of it, but then what does it do today? What are the superpowers of it? How does that sort of make you different in the market?
Yeah, the idea of Aspen is that it gives us this opportunity to very quickly and accurately read through a patient's chart. And I'll tell you a story. It's a story I love to tell because I think it's such a good depiction of the value of Aspen. At CEDAR, we do a lot of women's health studies when there's a pipeline for it. And we were doing a study where we had to identify patients who had had a hysterectomy. And when the model tells us these patients are fit, we do a human review just to make sure before we reach out to the patient. And there was a patient that the model said this patient has had a hysterectomy. Looking through their medical charts, there's no mention of hysterectomy. There's no ICD code. There's no CPT code. There's nothing in the notes that says this patient has had a hysterectomy. However, the doctor had written, and I can't remember the exact details, but it was in the wrong place. The doctor had written voluntary removal of uterus. And Aspen
Oh,
read voluntary removal of uterus and said, hey, this patient has had a hysterectomy. Now, I can't tell you with certainty the counterfactual, but if a nurse practitioner was slowly reading through and looking for hysterectomy, I'm not sure they would have found that, right? But the model can identify it in seconds. We can go through a patient record in seconds with 98% accuracy. And so that's really the value to us there, which is both the precision and the efficiency. We can precisely get um, patients that have the right IE criteria, and we tend to have much lower DQ rates for those patients, but we can also do it with speed. We don't have to rely on an expert who's running through the data telling us what things should look like.
wow! And I think that's such an exciting story because the data that you mentioned your platform picked on is not available on any real world evidence, on any EMR, recordings. So I think that's and at a scale, I think that's such a powerful tool to have.
Yeah,
Uh,
and that's the difference, I think, with claims in EMR, and when you've got the free notes and you have something that
yeah.
can read through the free notes and tell you versus having the structured data. Yeah, and I'm gonna steal something that one of my clients and friends told me they're thinking about it. So one of the largest pharma companies, and I'm not sure if I can disclose this, so I'll just um, keep it broad, said that the way that they are instructed to think about AI is as a digital workforce. And so they're not thinking about AI as a replacement. They're thinking about AI as an augmentation. We have a human workforce and we have a digital workforce. And I had shamelessly stolen that in my mind. And the way I'm thinking about AI is really as this digital workforce. AI is putting in the work that is going to allow humans to operate at their highest level. AI for us is running through the records and it's figuring out how do we get to the right patient? Who is the right patient? What does this look like? And it's giving our people all the information they need to close a deal. It's giving our people all the information they know to say, this is the patient, this is the doctor, this is the opportunity. And so, with that information at your fingertips, with the technology as your tool, because that's what it is, it's a tool, we can really take things to the next level.
So I'm now compelled to ask you this. Let's say you have a budget to hire 10 people in your workforce. How many of them are going to be AI and how many are going to be humans? I'm
Like,
assuming with AI workforce, you are referring to AI agents, right? So how many AI agents are you going to hire? How many humans in the future? Let me put you on spot.
that's so interesting. I would like to keep my organization flat at this point. I
Right.
mean,
Okay.
in the clinic, we need to hire people in the clinic as we grow. So in the
Sure.
clinic, we grow, we need to hire CRCs. You can't have AI seeing the patient with CRCs at some point. Maybe we have robots, but the
Yep.
patient experience is really important. We have like 96% retention in our studies, and it's because of the fantastic work our CRCs do. And
Sure.
so people have to increase in the clinics. But when it comes to everything else, I would like to keep a flat organization and be thinking about how do we leverage AI instead. And so one
Flat,
of the
like flat as it is today. Flat.
completely flat. I don't see the need to
Wow.
really hire anybody else. It's
And that's because
really
of AI.
yeah, I think that we
Wow.
can use AI at least over the next 12 to 24 months to be able to enhance what people are already doing. So I'll give you the example of our clinical trial education team. Our clinical trial education team are the folks on the phone doing the hard grind of reaching out to the patients. And
Yeah.
they can spend 75% of their time scheduling patients. So what does their day look like if we take all that scheduling and ask AI to do the scheduling? We've now increased the capacity of that team by 75%.
Wow. So keeping the team flat, you can increase the productivity by 75%.
With the
All
right
right.
investments into AI. And so these are the things.
So
I mean,
yes.
this is theoretically what you can do, right? You have to see how it works in practice. Anything is, I'll tell you, if nothing else, working at a site has taught me that what you write down in a protocol is not the same actually happens in practice. And so this is theoretical and AI goes wrong and
Yeah.
things make mistakes and there are people,
Sure.
but theoretically, that's something that we can do to transform that team. Our senior director of recruitment, Kate Collins, is just absolutely phenomenal. Huge shout out to Kate and her team that do this really incredible work. And I want to be able to give them the tools so that they can spend their time doing what they do best, which is talking with patients and educating patients that they're so passionate about. And allow the other pieces to be done by AI. And that's just one example that I think is quite dramatic. But there are other examples across the board of where Cedric, our CTO, and I are looking for ways to make everybody's lives easier
Yeah.
with AI. The thing you have to work on though is the change management because Ayush being the CEO as well. What people will always do is say to you, Ayush, I need headcount. Mimi, I need headcount. I need more people. I need more people. And we have to,
Yeah.
to try to get people to think a little bit differently, which is I need support, but let's talk through what that support could look like.
So how successful have you been? I've not been as successful in this, and I share the sentiment. If I have to hire 10 more guys, there better be 9 AI agents and 1 human. I get the thesis and the theory, right? How successful have you been in sort of sharing this sentiment to your team?
So, I'll give you a story again. At the
Right.
beginning of the year, Kate, who is our senior director of recruitment, she had in the budget one headcount, and she and Amy Walls is her boss, at the vice president of engagement, came to us and said, "We are going to forego that headcount and try to use AI instead."
Okay. All
Um,
right.
so
That's a buy-in.
it's working. It's
Okay.
working. So we'll see. Slowly, slowly. Change management's hard.
Wow. So you're going big in the AI. Outstanding. And obviously because you're not a massive pharma company, you will have a much faster adoption as compared to any larger pharma company. And then a pharma company can then actually sort of get benefits of you being a true AI adoption partner with them. Uh, on the patient experience side, I understand the point where you say there's still a human in the loop requirement, and the entire experience depends on human connection there, and so on and so forth. However, we both know there are companies who are automating this entire patient experience at a clinical trial, right? Even from patient enrollment to end through an AI agent, giving them a phone call, writing emails, talking to them, all of this, right? How do you see, that adoption? How do you see the future for that?
Well, let's think about it now and let's think about it in the future, because the future generation is going to look very different to the current
Sure.
the
Sure.
current
Yeah.
population that we have.
Yeah.
Um, There are definitely situations in which it's easier to talk to AI than to talk to a real human being. And there may be certain groups of people who would be open to it. Maybe if you're recruiting for a vaccine study and you're trying to recruit 18 to 24-year-olds and you want them to just talk about a vaccine with AI, maybe we could do that there. But when you're
Good.
talking to somebody about sensitive and complex diseases that require
Sure.
empathy, require understanding, and require connection, it would be hard for me to hypothesize that we could replace humans in that process. When you're talking to older people, let's say we're recruiting for a vaccine study for 64 plus, and we're recruiting older people who really like to talk, by the way, and really enjoy having conversations and engaging and talking about what's going on in their medical history and learning about the opportunity. Again, I would find it really hard to hypothesize that they would respond to AI in the way that they respond to Kate's team,
Yeah.
Joanne, and to Connie and to Mari, when they sit with them and hear them and talk with them, and they build these real relationships. They talk about, we're in Texas, they talk about the Bible, and they talk about other things as well that allow them to connect on a human level, and that's what builds the trust. And I
Yeah.
think that it would be hard to maintain an ecosystem of trust that didn't include a human connection.
Let me share something, and I need your thoughts on this. So I have a 5-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old boy, right? And they talk to Alexa the entire day. Today, if I ask them, I'm sure they will say that they empathize, or Alexa empathizes with them more than I empathize with them. For my 3-year-old and my 5-year-old, Alexa is a real person, and I mean, they actually, and it's scary, it's profound, but that's the truth. I see them building a real relation with Alexa. Now, now these kids, 20 years later, so these are the kids who are growing up with Alexa.
Mhm.
I hate to say it, but that's the fact, right? 20 years later, do you think they will share the same sentiment of human in the loop?
I think it could be very different, Ayush. I really do. I think that it's real. Relationships with AI is real. We've seen all the case studies, the ones where people fall in love and get married and do
Or
all
the
the things.
marital guy?
I was really I think I was listening to a podcast about it. I can't remember, but people really build and fall in love
Yeah.
with AI, which is niche now. But on a less extreme level, kids who are growing up um, have a better understanding of technology than us. I was talking, my sister's in London, and I was talking to her on the phone, and her little 6-year-old niece, Poppy, took the phone away and started pressing buttons. And she gave it to my sister. My sister couldn't figure out the buttons, and Poppy had to teach her how to use her phone to get rid of the filters that she had put on. Right? We're the new generation. They are going to interact with AI and technology in a totally different way, and so we should be ready for that.
Yeah.
Right now, my company has to be prepared to recruit the population that exists, and the
Yeah.
population that exists, I believe, requires a human connection. But as the what generation are we on now? Whatever generation we're on now, as that generation ages, um, it is probably going to look different, and the role of AI could be more extreme. But we also don't know what's going to happen. Maybe AI becomes highly regulated, and these things go away, and I'm not sure, but I definitely think there's a world in which that is a possibility.
So you've been running this transformation with AI at your organization, at both at CEDAR and Aspen, I suppose. And I know you personally as well. You are a powerhouse CEO. You're a 24/7 person, and I know that probably that's the reason CEDAR hired you. uh, how do you get the time to run ultra marathons?
So I can't run them right now. That's just so ridiculous. I have the time right now to do 45 minutes a day of exercise, and I wake up every morning, and by 5:36 I'm in the gym and I'm doing my exercise 45 minutes a day. I'm lucky I do a little bit of yoga in the evenings 2 or 3 times a week, and I walk my dog, but I am not running ultra marathons right now, so just so
All of what you mentioned is a lot of physical exercise, right? I run the organization as the CEO, and it's difficult to walk 10 steps. Right? How do you get the time? How do you actually do even all of this that you just mentioned?
Exercise for me is like breathing. It's not a option. I can't if I don't work out 6 times a week, it doesn't work for me. Yeah, it's not an option. I wake up, I'll forego sleep for exercise. I'll have 1 hour less of sleep for exercise. I will
Wow.
have I'll have whatever recreation time I have, whatever time for myself. But I also do believe in the importance of time for yourself, because I would not be able to run this company if I didn't carve out time um, to make decisions and time to consider. Because when you're sitting behind a computer and things are flying at you one after the other, after the other, after the other, yes, you can make decisions on the spot, but there are certain decisions that you really need to think through. And it's very hard to think through them in those kind of approaches. And so carving out that time for me is it's critical to allow me to be able to operate the best that I possibly can for CEDA. The 45 minutes that I spend in the morning in the gym, a lot of the time, maybe not when I'm boxing and someone's trying to hit me, but a lot of the time, that's when I'm processing the decisions that I was considering the day before. And then, I'll always think about how do I integrate exercise into my routine. Our SVP of clinical operations, MJ, he's a morning person. I'm a morning person. Um, I'll walk my dog early and give him a call when I'm walking my dog, or the other day, I was having a conversation with our medical director fairly late in the evening, 8:39, and decided to take a walk while I'm doing that. So I try to fit it in because physical activity for me is really important.
And how did the boxing thing happen? That was so, I mean, it was so interesting to see, and then again, I mean, I come from India. Boxing isn't a big thing here, but I know, it's something that people really follow, in the US. And I saw a little clip that you showed me, and it looked really professional. How did the boxing happen? I mean, even if you got beaten up, that's all right? How did that happen?
Yeah, I've been doing boxing for a while, but just on the bags. I think I started kickboxing in 2013. So I've been boxing for a really long time. And I was feeling kind of a hunger to do some kind of event, and I knew I wouldn't have time to prepare for an ultramarathon. An ultramarathon really requires a great deal of commitment. You have
Yeah.
to run for at least 5 days a week. But what's killer for the ultra marathon, and those of you who are listening who have run marathons know that you have to have one long run a week. An ultra marathon, you need to have a long run on a Saturday and a long run on a Sunday. So it completely takes up your entire weekend. And then generally I'll do a run in the morning and a run in the evening when I'm doing an ultra. And so it's just a huge amount of time, which I was happy to give to it at the chapter of my life that I did it. I met my husband doing it, and we would do it together. And so a lot of our relationship built and grew through running and spending time on the trails. I just didn't have that in me. This was a few years ago, but I was kind of seeking something, and I was thinking, should I do bodybuilding? Should I do a Hydrox event? Should I go back and do? I used to do a lot of obstacle course races.
All
Um,
right.
and I was in my boxing gym, and I saw a sign for an event which was called Punch for Parkinson's. And Punch for Parkinson's is a event in Boston where I used to live before moving to Texas, to raise money for um, training patients with Parkinson in boxing. So there's a lot of evidence that boxing skills improves the Parkinson's symptoms. And there's a group out of there
Oh,
that do wonderful work where they provide completely free coaching to Parkinson's patients to give them this therapeutic opportunity. And I have a very close family member who has Parkinson's. And so it kind of hit home to me. And I thought, well, this would be great. I can raise some money. And I've raised money before doing some of my runs. And I don't think I realized a boxing event meant you get in the ring and you get punched. I just
you didn't realize that
I
till the
don't
time
think
who was
that
in the
think
room?
what exactly. So I said to my coach, I said, "Do you think I can do it?" And this was I think it was 4 or 5 months before, and he said, "I don't see why not." So I put my name in in the ring, right, and in the hat for it, and they have to select you. And I didn't really think much about it. I just kept going the way I was going. And then I remember I was on the plane to JP Morgan. So I think this was in 2024, either 23 or 24. And I got a notice on the plane, this was in January, that you have been selected for the event. And one thing about me is I am not a quitter. Like if I commit to something, I'm going to do it. So my heart sank and it said, okay, you've been selected. And I texted Chris, who's my coach, and I said, okay, Chris, we're gonna do this. The event was in April, so I'd never sparred before. I'd never been in the ring before. I
Yeah.
really wasn't in great shape. I was, doing a lot of work. I was in average shape. And so we just spent the next 3 or 4 months trying to get me in fighting shape. And it
Oh,
was a great experience. I did lose in the ring. I the girl, my opponent, she did a fantastic job. But I wouldn't have replaced it for the world. The amount that I learned and the amount that I experienced was just
yeah.
incredible. And now I actually go to a sparring boxing gym, and I love it. We do technical sparring. I went this morning. I go twice a week. It's a great workout. It's great for your mind. It's great for your body. It's cardio. It's strength. I highly recommend it.
Maybe not that great for your teeth. Might lose lose one or two. But then I mean, this is so much CEO founder energy, where you thought, what's the worst that could happen in a boxing ring, right?
Yeah. My husband says that I'm the definition of she believed she could, so she did. So there you go.
Yeah, quite evident. I
And
have to agree.
but after the match, he said, "I believe in you for everything except for boxing." He said that. That's the one thing I don't believe you're a boxer, 'cause I just don't have that aggression in me. I saw the girl on the other side of the ring, and I kinda smiled, and she was looking at me with these dagger eyes like, "Oh, I'm gonna beat you up." And at that point, I realized I'm not a boxing career is not for me, but I'm really glad I did it.
But something tells me I will find you in that ring once again in the future. It I mean, it looks to me that you're going to go back to the ring.
I don't know. I don't think I'm not a very angry person, and you have to be able to get an anger inside you. I don't really like the idea of hurting people. I like the dance of boxing, the technical movement of the boxing. I don't want to go in and hurt someone, but I enjoy I enjoy the back and forth and the partnership and the footwork and the strategy and the agility. I'm
Well,
not sure. Maybe let's see. Definitely not in the foreseeable future. Definitely not right now.
this is what's going to go viral. I'm not in there for the punches, for the dance. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, let me take this conversation, back to AI. Uh, um, what is that one advice that you would give to a young startup founder who's trying to build something in your space using the new workforce of agentic AI? What would you advise them? Where do you see a space for them in the future?
I would say learn as much as you can about the end user. Don't just create technology because it's cool. Don't just create something
Right.
because you think this is amazing, really cool technology. Like
Yeah.
as much as you can. I would even say go and work in a company where you want to integrate something. Like really make sure that you understand the end user. Because where I see technology go wrong is when a bunch of tech people got together and said, "Look how cool this is. Let's make it even more cool." Uh, and then the end user's like, I don't know what to do with this. This is beautiful, but it doesn't really serve my purposes. So, guys, please, as you're building out technology, there's so much need for technology in this industry, but please try and think about the end user.
Where do they start?
In terms of, well, start with a
So,
problem, right? What
yeah.
problem are you trying to solve?
Yeah, so I'm just trying to understand what are the top problems they should be solving that other people are not solving. I mean, look, what I've learned in this space, building for more than 10 years now, is the biggest problems to solve are also the simplest ones. But generally, people try to tackle the more complex problems first, and then somehow the simpler ones get lost, right? In your experience, are there one or two simpler problems that if one startup founder put their minds to, that's going to be a gold mine?
I mean, I can tell you our biggest pain point if that would be
Sure.
helpful. So
Yeah.
based on what we solve it, and I was actually talking with Dr. Bridges, our medical director, about this just yesterday, so less than 24 hours ago. Um,
All right.
we have lots of different systems at CEDAR that we have to use. Our own CTMS platform, real time. We have our Aspen platform. And then on top of that, we also have to work with all the different technology that the sponsors give us. And so at any point, somebody working in the clinic may have 20 different sign-ons and 20 different platforms that they have to deal with. It could be even more because we're conducting 40 plus studies. So any way that technology could be used to make it simpler so that things get integrated, so that things get pulled together, so it's not this manual, go on this platform, go on this platform, go on this platform. I think that would make sites' lives a lot easier. That seems to be something that gets complained about a lot.
And this is on the clinic side experience or on your internal admin experience? On the clinic side experience.
The clinic side, because remember, the more time that they spend dealing with technology, and if there's an issue, it could be all day, then the less time they spend seeing patients and the slower a trial runs.
All right. Okay.
Are you ready to do
Uh,
that? I can see your wheels turning.
yes. Sounds very excited. I might even sort of edit this out from the episode. Let me talk to you one on one. All right. But I think there's real opportunity there, and you know I agree with you. There are 40 plus platforms, different companies, and then if there is an interoperable platform that sort of combines all together and makes a perfect. So I think I agree with you. I hope the a lot of the audience that sort of are our subscribers are these budding founders who want to build something in the space of AI and clinical trials or life sciences. So I think that's a very good advice. Uh, finally, before sort of I let you go, I have to run this a rapid fire fun round with you.
Let's do it.
Uh, and this is the last segment, a very fun rapid fire, simple rules, short answers, it, first instinct, no filter, and you're explicitly not allowed to be polite, right? And I know you are quite polite, uh, but this is exactly the point where you avoid being polite. If you start a sentence with, well, it depends, I'm going to cut your mic off. All right, let's go. Uh, Pre-race breakfast. What's in it?
What's my breakfast? It's
Pre-race.
oatmeal with peanut butter and protein powder.
All right. Walk-up song if you ever boxed professionally.
Well,
Do
that's
an
why I
entry
did.
song.
Yeah, it was Cypress Hill.
I'm sorry?
It was a Cypress Hill song.
Okay. All right. I'm not aware of it, but I'm sure it's going to be a great one. All right. Sneaker you're running in right now. The brand and the model.
Um, Hoka's. I don't remember the model, but I run in Hoka's.
All right. The worst pharma conference swag you have ever taken home.
Probably just a cheap pen. It was useful though.
All right. That one big pharma buzzword that needs to die in 2026.
Oh, you're putting me on the spot, Ayush. Okay, here's my pet peeve. I hate it when people say AI ML. That drives me crazy.
Thank you for saying that. It's not the same. Trade show gimmick you'd personally outlaw.
A trade show. There wasn't there somebody giving a tattoo at the conference that we went to?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. And there was this guy dressed. Yes. Yeah, I
I'm
would
not.
ban him.
I'm not sure if we can make people can make the right tattoo decisions at a conference. I mean, it's I wouldn't necessarily ban it, but that was a bit wild.
Yeah. Yeah. And there were people who were getting the tattoos done, by the way. So they had audience, but I agree that should be outlawed. Uh, you know, an aisle at Walmart that secretly teaches you something about healthcare.
The what? Sorry, the
So I mean, what's that one responsibility at Walmart that secretly teaches you the most about healthcare?
It's not that secretly teaches. I've learned so much when I was at Walmart. It was such a wonderful opportunity. And what Sam Walton did was he created a retail giant for people in the community. All the other stores were going to big cities, and
Mm.
they've all gone. Sears, JCPenney, they all went to the cities, they abandoned their communities. The beautiful thing about Walmart is the commitment that Sam and the Walmart team have to the community in Arkansas and the community across America, and their focus was really on where there weren't resources and rural patients. And that's now become my focus in healthcare. Where are there medical deserts, and particularly clinical trial deserts, and how can we create opportunities for patients without access? And so I am, standing on the shoulders of giants, and those giants being Walmart, as I think through a strategy in DFW and to try and reach some of those communities.
Wow, and that's so beautifully also syncs with what you are actually doing.
It's a
Wow,
story. It works.
it works. Yes. Wow. All right. And finally, if Aspen Forge had a personality, was a real person at a dinner table, who would that be? How will that sound?
Oh my goodness. I don't know if Aspen Forge had a personality. Um, someone it's really fast. Someone who knows a lot and is really, really fast, I guess.
Someone who's really fast, like a Flash from
Someone who's
Marvel.
fast but also knows a lot. Someone like a really fast encyclopedia, maybe. I'm not sure.
All right. So that's like having dinner with Flash, right? From Marvel or DC, if
There
I'm
you
not
go.
I'm terrible at that. Okay. Got it. Mimi, you are officially one of the most fun guests we have had on the show. And I'm sorry for putting you on spot so many times, but you were great. Thank you so much.
It was my
Uh,
pleasure. Good time.
Dr. Mimi Fenton, CEDAR Health Research Aspen Insights, board advisor at Anervea, ultra runner, boxer, and as far as I'm concerned, the most interesting person to talk to about AI in clinical workforce right now. Thank you for doing this, Mimi.
Thank you,
If
Ayush.
you like this, thank you. And if you guys watching, if you like this episode, you should have, because she's better company than I am. Please share it with someone in pharma who really needs to hear this. subscribes to the show, and as always, keep building. We'll see you in the next episode. Thank you.